Okay, so we'll pop out of APR, and I'm glad I've enlightened. Well,
You-
at least you, Con. At least you.
Well, hopefully others as well.
Yeah. Now we spoke about streaming from this camera,
Yep.
and this once again could be video in itself. I've looked into this, and you basically need a university degree to work out how this
Oh,
works.
IPSs and DNSs. Oh,
And
I
I'm
hate
really hoping, I'm putting it out there to the Sony engineers. They're welcome to come on board here and explain it, or we could do a Skype or something with them, because I feel that this is a great feature. And we're always hearing about, oh, now you can stream live on Vimeo, now you can stream live on YouTube, and live this, stream that, and the camera has this capability. I'm not quite sure how to nail it at the moment. It's not a huge problem because we go through Teradeks and Dageros and things like we've sort of mentioned in the past.
Are you saying a USB dongle on a camera like this can replace a Dagero or a Teradek?
It not to the same level of quality.
So there's a caveat there. Yeah. Yep.
As in the redundancy, it's just one mobile phone dongle, in your mobile. So it's Wi-Fi into your mobile phone. I mean, this will change obviously in the years to come, because we're starting to they're starting to establish the 5G network,
Which I hear is like 1 gigabit.
That's
it's just, not megabytes, gigabit fast.
It's going to be incredible. Which is, once again, I'm talking this camera up. It's a good camera just for the long haul. Because I can make it work for me. I can earn money from it, and I don't think the TV networks in Australia will change to 4K.
Not
anytime
for news.
soon.
Not for news.
Anytime soon. Or they'll use 4K in acquisition for great in drama and things. But for the for the main, all studio cameras, of course, are 230 inch. They're just big. So another thing about this camera too is I think at the end of its life, it may not actually end up on the shelf in the background of our studio here. I think this camera could easily integrate into an OB environment or something, because you can put a Tri-X back on it, or
easily done.
If you don't put a Tri-X back on it, say at the golf or something, you could just have someone tagging along with a microwave link. You could record the tee-offs or whatever in slow-mo, and then you could play that back.
Oh, that's right, this camera will do slow-mo,
and then you can just play it out of the SDI through the microwave link. So I think this particular model, I know I'm probably crazy saying it, talking about future-proof cameras, but I do feel with this camera that you're not going to get left on, with boxes of digital Betacam tapes or boxes of XD cam tapes. This S/S system.
Speaking of the cards, how many cards do you have, and how many cards do you think you need? What sizes?
I have 6.
6 out of what size?
3 big ones, 3 small ones.
Well, by big you mean?
The 128 gig and the 64 gig.
So,
I think they are. Yeah. So
is that enough?
It depends what you're doing. It's enough for me. Sometimes you can get caught out if you're shooting, say, 4K or slow-mo, because then
But this camera doesn't do 4K? Oh, you're talking about on the
F5, because I use these cards across both cameras.
Which is a good thing,
that's fantastic. So in the car, I've spoken about this before in other videos about, when we used to have a pile of 10 digital Betacam tapes, and then we, 10 XD discs, shrunk, and that's fantastic. And now you've got these things that don't even really need their own compartment. They can just sit somewhere in the car.
Are they expensive media?
They are. They are expensive. I won't quote the prices because I actually didn't do the research, and also I don't want to date the video, and B&H will probably have a different price to Sony, etc., etc. But they are fairly expensive. But
we forget that once upon a time we used to pay like thousands of dollars per year on tape stock.
Recently, I was shredding some old documents that I didn't require anymore for tax reasons, and the shredding of the receipts for XD discs and certainly digital Betacam tapes. I mean, I spent a lot of money, and
the thousands.
Oh, thousands, and you look at this and go, I think these are about 1,400 Aussie,
which you pay up front once.
That's right,
and maybe with a combination, maybe you spent $5,000-6,000 in media. Upfront cost, and people balk at that, but they forget how you're right. We used to pay continuously thousands of dollars for stock,
and we were basically giving credit because we were buying a few $100s in discs or tapes or whatever, and well, we weren't getting that money back until the invoice got paid, and also just driving to collect them, or you needed in a hurry getting a courier, and this thing saves you a lot of time. It saves space. I've reduced what's in my utility bag that I carry with me because I don't need to really say any more. That's quite
carrying
small.
a spare videotape cassette or disc, it takes up more space in your
and also
bag
with this camera. Well, I mean, if you have two 128 gig cards in this camera, you can or if you have a power supply on, you can record for a long time.
Not only can you record for a long time, but you can record continuously, because as one card fills up and you're still recording on the second card, it jumps over. You can take the full card, replace it with a new one, and relay record as long as you want.
And when the disc camera came out, the 700, and that had the feature where it had a little cache, and there was an option in the menu that you could do a disc change. But the reality is, if you're zoomed in from the back of the room, like we spoke about before, hitting the eject button and trying to, it's not really usable shot
in the real world.
No. So these cards, they are really good. Okay, so back into the menu, just scroll down to this option page here. So there are options.
What are the three options?
One is slow-mo.
Yep. And which you have on your camera.
I have the slow-mo option. One of the other ones is Apple ProRes. And the other one I think is Avid
DNX HD.
That's the one, yes. And I don't have those. That's not a major issue for me with all the.
Well, that's still handy for people to know. So it's a paid option.
It is a paid option, and I can't speak for the ProRes and the Avid one, but I know with the slow-mo one, for example, it was a couple of $1,000s from
memory.
A
couple of $1,000s. But to have that feature set in an ENG camera at 120 frames at the highest codec is still pretty good.
You can uninstall the software and install it on another camera, which is interesting.
Yeah. Fantastic. So I've got another picture here of the back of the camera. As we can see here from this picture, another advantage of these cameras is that every connector, input and output, video and audio is all there built into the body of the camera. Can you run us through some of the connectors?
Well, look, it's all pretty familiar stuff. It's a 4-pin input for external power. There's the 12-volt Hirose to run accessories,
such as your wireless receiver.
And then the two XLR audio inputs, the audio out,
which is a 5-pin now, I see.
And one thing this camera has, the reason I've got this slide up, is you can actually record an external source.
So when would that come in handy? Like
in the news pool feeds, rock concerts. If you go to a rock concert, they invite the media, but they supply the vision. So the vision that's up on the big screens, they actually just dish out a few SDI cables to all the media, and then they regulate what footage actually goes out, so they won't give the media, say, a song in its entirety. So they might just give a few seconds, 15 seconds of one song, the second song, etc. So the next morning on the morning shows, they will just have a montage basically of the different songs.
So they're sending you a feed of the cameras that are shooting the concert, and you're getting a feed of that to go into your camera.
And in the past, what would happen was you would take another recorder, like
really?
It was either the half rack SX or whatever it was, or the XD.
The J player.
All those things. So, but you had to lug that around. But the job still involved getting there, dealing with that technical aspect, and then going out to, say, shoot vox pops out the front, and you're wheeling this sort of trolley around with the external recorder, and you have to manage it. So this is a really good feature. So it's also called, I think, officially pool feed.
Pool feed.
Okay. And that can happen at major events where the networks actually are designated a certain, if someone famous or royalty or whatever is there, one network might be at the airport, one person from another network might be at the driveway, and another person might be. So they often share footage, and that's a great feature.
So is that sort of still something that still happens these days? The networks share footage?
I think it is. Well,
okay.
Yeah, I think it is now. I don't know. I haven't. It's over 20 years. 23 years since I worked full time in a TV station.
But back then, you didn't have features like that.
No, it was link trucks parked on footpaths and things like that. Wow. That didn't have all the satellite uplinks and things. But I think that's a good idea. But even in the corporate world, that's not a bad thing. Or if I wanted to record, an output from an edit system or something.
Well, I've been on jobs where we've shot in laboratories and they've got a microscope and you can get a feed out sometimes out of the microscope to record, and that's handy.
Look, I think it's one of those features. I probably won't use it a lot, but it'll just be that one time that it will save the day.
And make you the hero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also you'll notice in that picture there's 2 SDI outputs. And that's really useful because you can have a clean feed out of one, and then you can assign to, say, SDI2 has the viewfinder information.
So when you say clean feed, no supers, no
nothing.
Battery level, audio meters, just a clean feed.
Yeah, so in certain environments, the director or someone might not want to see the viewfinder display. You might want to see it, someone else might want to see it. It's very handy, but also I tend to talk about the things no one else talks about, as you probably worked out. But having a second SDI port can be useful because those connectors, they're just backed onto a printed circuit board. And so if you have a cable BNC connector there, if the camera's on the ground or someone kicks it or
trips over
it, or cable, something happens while you're doing something handheld live, it can get damaged even if it cracks. So to have a second SDI output option is insurance
and redundancy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what other connectors do cameras like this have that are useful?
Well, this newer camera, you'll notice there, it actually has an HDMI output. I'm not big on HDMI as an interface, but it's just with us. We have to live with it.
I wish my 230-inch camera had a HDMI out. Mine doesn't. I've got a P2 camera.
I haven't used it a lot, but in the corporate world, you might end up in a boardroom, and I've had this happen to me before. Can you just give us a feed for our big TV? And of course, they don't have SDI inputs. I have seen some projectors with SDI inputs, but they're usually up in the ceiling. So that's a handy option. These other things no one talks about, Genlock, technically they actually are quite important.
Well, certainly if you're doing multi-camera and shooting long-form stuff like the concert, where you're recording for an hour, 2 hours, you want all the cameras to be scanning at the same rate per frame, because you might have timecode inputs and they're all jam synced to each frame, but each camera might be scanning the top of the frame on that particular timecode frame, and the other camera's scanning it down here. So over a long period of time, that scanning will go out of sync. So what Genlock does is makes all the cameras scan like this together.
Well, look, it just adds another element of professionalism, because if it is, say, a concert, well, someone's paid, I don't know how much they would pay to hire a venue, an arena, the costs involved in that, and at the end of the day, our little part of the process needs to be right, and Genlock, especially long cable runs, the SDI of course can do long cable runs, and those things are really important, and when there's a lot of noise when the concert starts, and if you don't have noise cancelling headphones, you just have to have so much faith that these things are right, and these are features of broadcast spec cameras.
Oh, that's right. So timecode has always been a big deal in the broadcast world, and even more so today, I think is just as important as it was 20, 30 years ago. And I wish more people would, pay more respect to features like these in cameras.
Yeah, and if you do have a chain of cameras, well, if you're not using Tri-X cameras, if you are just matching these 3 or 4 of these cameras up at an event,
recording ISO and then post-producing the footage.
Well, then just looping the time code through is fantastic. Having an in and an out.
Because if you've got 2 cameras side by side, you don't have to run time code from a central source. You can loop it out of one to the one next to it. But most days you have lock-up boxes that can attach to cameras and keep all the cameras in sync, especially those ones that have sync out as well. will allow them to also be in frame sync as well.
But once again, if you were trying to build up a Frankenstein rig, that would be a distribution amplifier. It'd be more cables, more interfaces, and
power supplies, batteries, things that go wrong.
We need a D-tap to Hirose to power that distribution amplifier.
And it only takes regulated 12 volts, not
all of those.
Battery 16 volts.
All of those.
Yeah.
So once we're just highlighting, really how good these self-contained cameras are.
Yep.
Okay, so what we've got here, one of my favourite subjects is weight and centre of gravity. So this was just I did remove, as I did in my last video, I did remove the foam shoulder pad to sort of make it square. This is quite a comfortable camera to work with.
Again, another advantage of this form factor. Everyone needs to emulate the design of a camera being able to sit comfortably and well balanced on your shoulder.
Yeah, and this camera, I think, to check the specs, it is lighter. I think it's about 900 grams lighter than an F800.
Okay.
And it uses less power because it doesn't have the spinning disc. But this gives you all the dynamics, if you like, of operating in the field. If you have to, if you're not in a position to, say, take your tripod, this is another area where these cameras shine. You say, well, I haven't got the tripod because I can't carry it.
Or again, the example we brought up once before in another video, you're at a red carpet event at the Logies or Academy Awards, and
there's that, and just say you have to improvise when you don't have the tripod. You might say have to get in a taxi to drive you somewhere because you can't get your car in. Haven't got the tripod. Okay, well look, I'll just rest the camera on the sidewalk. Put my hand under there just to give it the angle I need. Then I can tilt the viewfinder up, or I'll just lean against this tree to sort of brace it. Or if you do get caught out with any of those helpful aids, then you can just brace like we have showed in the other video. So that's an important one, I think. Yeah.
And as we can see here, the center of gravity on the camera is relatively close to where the shoulder sits, I can see.
I have used this, in long form handheld situations before, and this is quite a comfortable camera to use in those situations. I did take the hand off there. I didn't take it off for very long, but I just wanted to demonstrate it does sit there quite nicely.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're near the end of our talk about 230-inch cameras.
I think so, and I do love these cameras. They're in my DNA. When I started my career, it was with these cameras. It's really only been...
You started in news.
I started it as at one of the local TV stations here in Melbourne.
Channel 9.
Channel 9, yeah, and it was either film or these cameras or high-end film. There wasn't a lot in between. So the last I guess since the 5D came into the system, which is that's
2008.
Yeah, and everything just sort of has unfolded ever since. But I still think there's a place for these cameras in the real world for us service providers.
Yep.
That yes, we do need the shallow depth of field cinematic look for some jobs.
Yep.
But we also might have to shoot sport. And we might have to shoot awards nights.
Yep.
And I'm afraid to say that these cameras do it better. And I'll just remind everyone, there is a 4K version of this camera. If 4K is a deal breaker, you can get a 4K version of this camera.
So in that form factor, E&G lenses, E&G form factor, 4K sensor, but it's still 230-inch?
It's still 230-inch,
oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, there are techniques for throwing the background out of focus. We
used to do them for ages with these
just
cameras.
Step back and zoom in.
Zoom in and open up, put an ND filter in.
It's not as good, I admit, it's not as good as a
Or
super
as
35.
easy, especially if you're in a tiny room in someone's living room or bedroom and you need to film an interview with them. Yeah.
And I've done a job with this where I shot some sport, and the FS5 comes along with a 50mm lens. It's actually quite small, it just fits in a porta brace bag. So you could say, well, look, I'll do the ISO action on this in slow-mo, and then we can just pull out the FS5 just with a little satchel wedge on there, take this off, plonk that on, and do your shallow depth of field interviews in the grandstands or whatever.
Which is what it's great for.
That's fantastic, yeah.
So the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
One camera does not do everything anymore.
No. And we're in business,
Yep.
and the Super 35 cinema stuff just does not cut it in certain environments, but it doesn't a lot. But this is still, I feel, my subjective opinion, this is actually still a really important camera.
Yeah. Well, I've still got my 230-inch camera, and it's been very handy on many jobs where it is the right choice and the best choice for that particular job.
Yeah.
Oh. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that talk on 230-inch cameras. And hopefully we'll see you again on another video.
Another one. And I do love talking about these cameras, so feel free to send me an email if you like. I'm happy to discuss them because I do love them.
Yeah, and can we say leave your comments?
Sure, do that. Do that.
I think that's the first time we've said that. Leave your comments below the video.